Hey guys, here's your Lift recap for this week. So you know that we've been talking about the Old Testament, and this week we focused on a time where the Israelites were actually going back to Israel. They hadn't been there for a very long time. So in a lot of ways they had to get back to the basics of their faith. Sometimes we just fall away from our faith. Sometimes there's so many things pulling us, so many things taking our attention away from what's important that we forget about the basics of our faith. It's just like riding a bike or playing a video game you haven't played in a while. It just takes the simple thing of getting back to the basics. So when it comes to our faith, here are three things that we talked about on Sunday. So we talked about looking at God's Word. God's Word was something that the Israelites hadn't even really read for a long time. So when they did, they realized how wrong they were. They realized how far they had gotten from God's ways. And the same thing is true for our life. The further we get away from God's Word, the harder it is for us to hear His voice clearly, the harder it is to be on mission for God or to know what God's desires are. Also, another basic we need to get back to, besides just reading God's Word, is refilling our spirit. We do that by being around other Christians who are passionate about getting God deeper into their lives, and we do that by spending time with God ourselves. So we have to remember that He is with us, that He works in us, and that He disciplines us. This is something that the Israelites struggled to understand, but Haggai and Zechariah reminded the Israelites that this is a vitally important thing in the life of a believer, is to refill our spirit. So, number one, read God's Word so that you can hear His voice. Number two, refill your spirit so that you can feel connected with God, that you can feel empowered, because you don't want to be running on empty. And then lastly, we talked about remembering Jesus' work. The book of Zechariah actually ends with this awesome prophecy of Jesus. And there are three things that he talked about that we need to remember about what Jesus did for us. Number one, we see in chapter 9 of Zechariah that he prophesied that Jesus would be a humble king, that he would ride into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. And so we serve a God who humbled himself to be in the form of a man. Secondly, he was also betrayed. We saw that in Zechariah 11, that Jesus was betrayed by his close friends. We can expect the same thing if we are a true follower of Christ. Eventually people will turn on us. That's just kind of the life that we have chosen. But yet, even though Jesus was betrayed, he still went to the cross for us, that he still cares about us, that he still loves us. And then lastly, we see this picture of a fountain in the book of Zechariah that pictures Jesus' death for us, that forever there would be a continual fountain in us, replenishing us, cleansing us from our sin. And so all of these things go together to show that we need to remember Jesus' work. So number one, a basic thing to do, hear God's voice. Number two, refill your spirit. And then number three, remember what Jesus did for you. This is the thing that your friends need to see the most. Making Jesus known is about telling Jesus' story to other people. And it's about showing them what he has done for you. So remember that this week, and I challenge you guys to make Jesus known to one person.